cards speak of trouble ahead. This will challenge me. I will struggle. But just when all seems like it is lost, I had an epiphany, and all was saved. You've entered the lair. There's no turning back now. Today we summon the sound of something ancient. It screams like a banshee, deafeningly loud. A 3D printed air raid siren, a project I've dreamt of building for years. And now, with a printer large enough to handle its scale, I'll summon this beast, layer by layer. If you're walking a similar path, may this video light your way, or at least warn you of what's ahead. I'll show you the mistakes that I've made so you can avoid them as well. And when this build is done, we'll awaken this Blue Banshee, and you'll hear what all this noise is for. Everything you need, links and materials, are down below. And if you enjoy creations like this, consider subscribing. This journey's just begun. Here's the tools that I recommend. The lubricant and the super glue are optional, and these are the bearings I used for the assembly. The parts of the Banshee all laid out after over 24 hours of printing. We start simple, assembling the hand crank. A little bit of lubricant here seemed like a smart idea, but it's definitely not required. Applying it here to the handle where it rubs the crank seems like it would help things move a little better. That was the thought process. But here's where I start to learn that the threads on most objects are reversed. A little lefty-tighty, righty-loosey. When everything is nice and snug, the first step is already complete. And just like that, we can move on. The Siren, the voice box of the beast. Here are the 3 pieces of the assembly all laid out and ready to go. On the back of this piece, there's some support material that I'll need to remove. I'll carefully store that for later. This brim and support material on this piece will need to be removed as well. This is where an X-Acto knife can come in handy. I cut out all the excess material, being careful with this delicate piece. And with these fins mostly clean, I get out my deburring tool and clean out some of the rough edges around the inside. I may have been a little too aggressive with it, but you can see the difference it made. But this piece needed a lot of cleanup. I used a foam sanding block to try to smooth out some of the roughness, but I don't think it really made any difference. What was needed was a lot of careful cleanup with the knife and testing for rubbing between all the parts. This is one of Thingiverse's most enduring icons, and yet clear guidance on how to assemble it remains elusive. No instructions, few videos, just pieces scattered like relics of a forgotten machine. Time to assemble the 3 pieces of the Siren. Super glue, again, not required, but I do think it's a good idea as this part will be spinning extremely fast. There are alignment pins and holes to assist with assembly, and you can just press fit these together. However, learn from my mistake and make sure you don't glue the top piece upside down. You'll be able to see that it sits a little too proud here in a moment. Test fit things before gluing if possible. With that finicky portion complete, I moved on to the crankcase and gearing. Here I have all the pieces laid out, including a large bearing and the hand crank from earlier. More super glue, optional. As you can see, the press fit was more than enough to hold it all together. With that back piece pressed in, the large bearing can be set into place. And then, we can attach the hand crank to the largest gear with this conical screw. You may use 2 hands to do this. I highly recommend that you do. Please be mindful that this conical screw has another reverse thread. And for the remainder of this assembly, we will need just 1 small bearing and these 2 small pieces. They will need to be joined together by inserting one into the other. Just like this. Take your small bearing and this part and insert it here in the casing under the largest gear. Test wiggles are optional, but highly recommended. And now we get to awaken the beast, alive at last. All of this very thin material that I'm removing has been modeled into the piece. You need a support material and it needs to be removed. It does come out fairly easily, but I recommend you come back after and clean it up with a knife. As you may be able to see, some of my edges were still pretty rough. I don't think it's obvious here, but you'll notice a small blue part I've just installed in the center. There. I do recommend gluing this piece. Now I will assemble another large gear out of these two pieces. The small piece comes from the crank casing from earlier. I did not glue these two parts. The pressure fit between the two was more than enough to hold them together. Sometimes pushing them down like this is the easiest way. But with that assembled, it can be added to the crankcase, and we can move on. Do not miss this step like I did. You need 2 bearings here, not just one below. If you're following along with my steps, move this gear over to the other part. It'll make assembly much easier. You'll need to put this top gear through this notched portion before you can insert it into the bearing to hold it. But with that complete, you can now sandwich these 2 halves together. I do recommend having 2 hands for this as well. With these 6 bolts, all normal threads, you can make these 2 parts finally into one. Insert them into the back of the crank assembly like so. Now, we insert the Siren into the mouth of the beast, and don't forget this peg like I did. You may need to sand the outside of the Siren and add lubrication to it to allow it to spin better. A third and final small bearing fits into the nose cone to stabilize the Siren as it spins. These small bearings are all an extremely tight fit. Place the nose cone on top and attach with the 3 smaller bolts, and like magic, the Blue Banshee is complete. 22 pieces come together at last to make something incredible. But now the moment I know you've been waiting for, the sound test. Thank you for joining me today. If you like what you saw here, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you want more, please view one of these videos above.